In order to understand Plato's recollection argument, we have to know a little something about his theory of forms. In this podcast, we're going to give a snapshot of what Plato's theory of forms is. Many of Plato's works are intended to present and develop on what has been called his theory of forms. Plato himself never described it as a theory, however, so when we go looking for a clean and organized set of statements laying out why he thinks forms exist, we will be disappointed. Forms are abstract, which means that they exist not as concrete and physical objects around us, but in some other way. We often discuss other entities as abstract as well, such as numbers. Forms would exist in the same realm as numbers, though forms are different from numbers as well. How are they different from numbers? Forms are said to be perfect and universal. They are not to be accessed via the senses. This makes sense given the fact that they are abstract. We don't claim to see numbers, even if we do see numerals, which represent numbers. Similarly, we access forms using reason alone. They are perfect because they admit of no exception. We can see what this means by looking at an example. So take beauty. For Plato, beauty is a form. We might ask what beauty is, and we might feel tempted to list all the beautiful things in the world, but this would be a mistake for Plato. Plato uses as an example Helen of Troy, said to be the most beautiful woman in the world. She is beautiful compared to other humans, but is she beautiful compared to goddesses, who are said to be finer things on a much grander scale than humans? No, Plato says, Helen would not be beautiful then. There is then a context in which Helen is beautiful, and a context in which she is not beautiful. But we are able to recognize her as beautiful, so we do perceive some property in her that makes her beautiful. This property itself, that is, beauty itself, cannot admit of exceptions. Otherwise, Helen may appear beautiful and then not beautiful in the very same context. Beauty itself must be unchanging, even if we admit that circumstances can affect our determinations of what is beautiful or not. Therefore, beauty itself must be constant. If beauty must be constant, then it must not be subject to the way the physical world is. Therefore, it must exist in a realm distinct from the physical world. If this is the case, then beautiful things in the physical world are said to share in beauty. That is, contain part of the form of beauty, but they are not the beautiful itself. Beautiful things exist in a different realm from their form of beauty. This holds true for Plato for other things as well. Things like justice, goodness, holiness, and as we see in the Phaedo, equality. He concludes that forms must exist, since if they didn't, we would not be able to distinguish, say, beautiful things from non-beautiful things, and we would have no reason to think that beautiful things all have something in common, namely being beautiful. This thing, being beautiful then, for Plato, would actually be the form of beauty.